What it do, cuckwads? It's your boy the Hater once again. And instead of a Raw review, which I'll be doing tomorrow, I had to do a video on Jacob Fatu. Now, my opinions on Jacob Fatu are very vocalized on this channel. And a lot of people seem to take contention with this. Now, everyone's allowed their own opinions. I would have it no other way. However, when it comes to Jacob Fatu, I gotta say a few things. Number one, I'm gonna start with something positive, which I have said in the past, and that is that Jacob Fatu tries, okay? Considering what he is and what his role is, he has done a pretty decent job in playing this, like, heel monster, you know what I mean? Like, he's tried, right? Now, my problem with Jacob Fatu is this, like, legendary status that has been given to him that he has not earned. Now, I didn't watch him in MLW, but quite frankly, I don't give a rat's ass about MLW. If it didn't happen in the E, it didn't happen at all, cuckolds. Now, with that being said and that out of the way, let's talk about him and some of his qualities. First of all, his promo skills. Now, this guy is not an absolute zero. He's not a zero Kelvin type of guy. However, he's by no means good at promos. You know, we have to remember and we have to judge him based on what he is to be fair, right? He is a Nepo baby. If this guy weren't part of the annoying family, then he probably wouldn't be in this company. He probably wouldn't even be a wrestler. So there's that, number one. In addition, the Anoi, aka the Annoying family, are from Samoa. Now, I've realized recently that maybe my hatred of Samoan wrestlers should really be narrowed down to a hatred of the Anoi family wrestlers, right? Now, obviously, when I say this, I am not including The Rock. The Rock did not wrestle like a Samoan. Matter of fact, I ain't never seen The Rock put his ass on someone else's face, okay? In any capacity. You know, he had Rikishi for that. Even when Vince McMahon had to kiss an ass, he had to kiss Rikishi's fat ass. And he's got a fat ass. Now, aside from The Rock, the Samoans are plagued by what I have creatively called the Samoan moveset. My boy, Carmelo Hayes, pointed this out in an interaction with Jimmy Uso, where he explained that 4 moves are not sufficient to defeat Cucky Owens. Now, I don't really care about Cucky Owens, nor do I care about Jimmy Uso, nor do I really care about Carmelo Hayes. But the facts are the facts. 4 moves, cucks. Sometimes they do a spear, which might be their 5th move. I don't even know if they got 4 moves in most matches. They do a super kick, some form of an ass going into someone's face. Then they do a splash that looks like shit. Then they do a super kick again. Then, of course, we've got the good old Samoan drop. And now they do the spear. Like, in the last, 10 matches of either Jimmy or Jey Uso, I have not seen another move. So I don't want to fucking hear about how they're good. They're not good. Jacob Fatu ain't much better either. He does, however, have, and I have to give props to a certain degree, he does have an Impaler DDT, which looks like complete shit. And he's got the Tiffany Stratton finishing move, which quite frankly is just not appropriate because it's a girl move, you know what I'm saying? But anyways, he does do those moves. Now, beyond that, he does the Samoan moveset. So in the ring, he's absolutely nothing special at all. When I say he's nothing special, I mean 2 things. Number one, he's nothing special compared to the average wrestler, let alone a good wrestler. Like, if you compare the amount of moves that he does with, let's say, Carmelo Hayes or Braun Breaker or, 95% of the roster, he has fewer moves. In addition, he's nothing special when compared to the Samoans. And that is at the crux of this video. The main issue that I have with him is only that despite being like every other Samoan, we're supposed to believe, absent any contrary evidence, that he is better than the other Samoans. Why is he a threat to the world champion, but Umaga isn't? The only explanation I can think of is despite the fact that Umaga was bigger than Jacob Fatu, everyone else was bigger than Umaga. Like, Umaga was a super heavyweight. He was presented as a super heavyweight, but then you see him wrestling like Triple H, who like towers over him and looks like a god in comparison, and you think to yourself, I don't give a flying fuck. Triple H would beat the shit out of this guy in seconds. Which brings me next to my next point. The actual credibility that wrestlers have. First of all, this is a ridiculous testament to wrestling. As we know, actual credibility means fuck all in wrestling because nearly everyone on the roster would destroy CM Punk in a fight, yet CM Punk is presented as a big deal. Now I know what you're thinking. CM Punk trained with Randy Couture, so did Daniel Bryan. We saw CM Punk fight. He can't fight for shit. Like if CM Punk and Otis got into a fight, Otis would obliterate him in a matter of seconds. If CM Punk and Gable got into a fight, Gable would obliterate him in seconds. Now, if CM Punk got into a fight with one of the Creed brothers, he would be dead in 3 seconds, right? There are levels to the credibility, and the credibility, quite frankly, doesn't matter. Here's the reality. The reality is that Jacob Fatu is credible for the same reason that a lot of people get this fake credibility. He stole some things or whatever it is that landed him in prison, and now I'm supposed to believe that he's a tough guy because he went to prison. Now, the hater's never been to jail or to prison, but if I must admit, I've gotten pretty close sometimes. You know what I mean? State versus hater, cuckolds. And the hater has interacted, shall we say, with many bad people. And a lot of these people have been to jail. They're all good people now, I would say, but a lot of them have been to jail, and a lot of them aren't tough guys, right? So this notion that he went to jail, therefore he's tough, is outside of any realm of logic. Secondly, as I said, it doesn't matter if he's tough either. But secondly, the underpinnings, nobody says this part out loud, but the underpinnings are that Samoans are somehow tougher than everybody else because they act ghetto. Let's say it like it is. That is part of their entire presentation. I'm supposed to believe that fat-ass Jey Uso is a tough guy because even though he grew up in wealth, these guys are all rich motherfucks. Even though he grew up in wealth, he talks like he didn't grow up in wealth. So therefore, he must be a tough guy. He's probably as tough as Cookie Rhodes. If you look at, like, for example, R-Truth, even now, would probably beat this shit out of him just because R-Truth clearly takes care of himself. You know what I mean? Like, then we get to the category of people like Kane and Big Show, Cesaro, Sheamus, Jack Swagger, Lashley, people that are just like big and strong, and like these guys would completely murder like the entire Samoan family. Like they're twice the size of these jobbers, right? Even like Drew McIntyre, you know? Now, a lot of people seem to have bought into this farce that the Samoans are tougher than everybody else because Haku once ripped someone's eyeballs out by breathing on them or some other goofy shit that no reasonable person would ever believe. Now, despite this, and, you know, irrespective of it, even if it were true, because we're not talking about Haku, we're talking about other people now. Irrespective of all of this, the vast majority of people that think that Jacob Fatu is good, not all of them, of course, but the vast majority are people that have never been in a fight, let alone done any combat sports and had any kind of experience in understanding what makes someone tough and what makes someone good at these things. The number one component, and the hater is not the biggest guy, so don't think this is like me being biased. The number one component is size, motherfucks. I'll give you this little anecdote. The hater was at a very reputable boxing gym at one point, and this gym had one pro and one semi-pro. The pro was a former world champion, and this pro sparred against one of the hater's buddies from boxing. And of course, the pro was better than him at boxing by 1,000 times, right? The pro was better than him, and he would have beaten him in a boxing match. But the hater's buddy was bigger than the pro because the pro was like a bantamweight, right? Then the same guy sparred against the semi-pro guy who was a light heavyweight. The light heavyweight knocked him out in a matter of seconds, right? And he wasn't even trying to. They were just sparring. But the power and the size of this person made for this to be the conclusion. So these fantasies that people have of like they'll say things like Ilya Topuria from the UFC, who's 125 pounds. They're like, this guy would beat up almost every man. No, he wouldn't. Ilya Topuria would have no problem destroying men that are his size and slightly bigger. But if you took Ilya Topuria and you had him, Ilya Topuria, for those who don't know, is the bantamweight champion, I believe, in the UFC, the little guy champion, or whatever, the featherweight champion or some shit. If you took Ilya Topuria and you put him against, I don't know, let's just go all out. You put him against The Undertaker in his prime, The Undertaker would murder him, right? Now, I understand that a lot of people are unathletic and small. And it is a much more likable scenario to think that you did jujitsu for 6 months, barely like holding your breath, right? And that now you think you can beat a guy that's 6'4", 260, and hasn't done jujitsu for 1 day. Here's what would happen. You would try to arm lock him, he would pound you to the ground, and you'd be dead. You understand? There are exceptions, of course, but this is generally what happens. Obviously, sometimes a small guy beats the big guy. So if Ilya Topuria, it's kind of like those things where they're like, oh, Bradley Martin couldn't beat Nate Diaz. Like, if you really believe that, you've never been in a fight. And you've never been in any kind of combat sports. He would have no chance. And this is from someone that has done combat sports for a large part of my life. Like, just admit that you don't know what you're talking about. You can have your opinion, but it's all theory. It's just something Joe Rogan told you, and you just believe it because you've never had this kind of experiences. If you go and wrestle someone that's stronger than you, you're not going to win. You understand me? Even if you're really good. It's as simple as that. Henry Cejudo is not going to tie up Kane into a pretzel. Henry Cejudo, if he uses his entire body, cannot lift Kane's leg off the ground. These fantasies of he's going to single leg him. He's going to grab his leg, Kane's going to grab him by the nape of his neck and just bury him into the ground. Like, these fantasies are just fantasies, okay? So, with that being said, as I said earlier and before this mini rant, we're not talking about legitimacy here. We're in the world of wrestling, where none of that shit matters. Where whether I like it or not, even though it's unrealistic, I have to accept that Jacob Fatu beat Braun Strowman up, right? That's fine. I'm totally cool with that. But I don't like how this becomes part of the allure. You know what I mean? Brock Lesnar isn't cool because Brock Lesnar is an NCAA champion and a former UFC champion. Brock Lesnar is cool because he can lift up the Big Show and F5 his ass. He's cool because he can grab anybody and just throw him around, right? This is not part of the presentation. This is part of his actual strength and abilities. Meanwhile, someone like Daniel Bryan can barely do a German suplex because he's weak and small. It's that simple, cucks. So, this idea that being tough in real life means you're a good wrestler is completely off base. Now this brings me to the most important part probably. Presence, right? Let's just say, for the sake of argument, that if Jacob Fatu and Obafemi were to get into a fight, despite Obafemi being larger, definitely stronger, and a shot put thrower, which means he's strong as shit, whatever the fuck he was, a power lifter, let's just say that Jacob Fatu can throw hands and he can beat up Obafemi, right? We've already established that this doesn't matter because wrestling's fake. These guys are never going to really fight in real life, so we know, right? Like, who would have thought that Bart Gunn would have beaten up like the Godfather and Bradshaw, right? That's the difference between a trained athlete and a non-trained athlete, right? But Bart Gunn wasn't 5'1". Bart Gunn was a big motherfucker. You know what I'm saying? And then Butterbean, who is another level and who's stronger than him, knocked him out like he was nothing, right? Because at a certain size, strength is going to control, but of course, obviously, skill is what makes differences when people are the same size. There might be no man alive, like under 165 pounds, that can beat Ilya Topuria. But there's a lot of men that are 260 that can beat him, right? This is a stark reality. I know people don't like to hear it. They like to think that maybe if I train all my life, I can beat up the bully who's 6'8", that bullied me in high school. You can't. Get a gun, I guess, but don't shoot anybody. That's not good, because you have no chance physically. Now, anyways, unless you're like a freak beast, right? Like, unless you're just like built of only muscle and you're like 5'3", but like 230 pounds yourself. But anyways, the point is, That's another thing that pisses me off. People say like, muscles don't mean you can fight. No, they don't. But absent anything else, muscles mean you can kick someone's ass. You know what I'm saying? Simple as that. You don't need to know how to fight to kick someone's ass. But nobody teaches you things anymore. Anyways, let's just say that Jacob Fatu can beat up Obafemi. I don't think so, but let's just say it, right? We now have to talk about the presence of Jacob Fatu. He has almost none. He shakes like a madman, and it's not intimidating, it's cringe, and it's stupid, right? All of these derivations that the Samoans act like retards don't intimidate anybody, right? It's part of that Haka culture, where it's like you do this goofy dance, and then someone comes, throws a net on you, and like just conquers you in like 2 minutes. You know what I mean? Like, it's simple as that. So I don't want to hear this shit. You look at Obafemi, and despite the things that I say, it cannot be denied that Obafemi has an intimidating presence. He is a very intimidating man, right? That is one of the only reasons why he has a shot in this business, right? Because it's not his physique, it's not his promos, it's not anything else. We've been over that. But he does have a crazy presence. Some people are just born with presence. Another example would be Batista. Even now that he's skinny, he has presence. Keanu Reeves. Not all presence has to be like intimidating. Some presence is just, presence. The point that I'm trying to make here, Cucks, is simply that presence can sell tickets because it sells the idea that this person is intimidating, right? Now, obviously in wrestling, a lot of the presence is based on someone's physique. That's why I say it's important to be in shape. It has nothing to do with the believability of beating somebody up, right? Because there's people that have presence that don't look like they're Kane, right? Obafemi's a great example. He's fat, but he's got presence. Now, he doesn't have the otherworldly presence of a superstar like a Booker T or like a Scott Steiner, but he's got presence. Jacob Fatu don't, right? It's as simple as that. Jacob Fatu doesn't have the presence. So all of his intimidation has to happen with him yelling and talking like an Uso, right? But the fact of the matter is, if you peel this veneer, it's just a regular guy, motherfucks. Now again, I want to make sure that it comes out clear. Overall, I have no problem with Jacob Fatu. I actually enjoy when he comes out because compared to the people around him, he's better. The focus of this video isn't to say Jacob Fatu sucks. That might be another video. This is to say that there's nothing special about him. He's just another guy. There was a dude called Eric Escobar that debuted like one random ass SmackDown and he was gone in 2 weeks. Remember Ricky Ortiz or whatever the fuck his name was? Like Atlas Ortiz. Remember him? It's like that. Big guy, right? No presence. Nobody cared. Remember when Braden Walker came in? Big guy. We know that he can wrestle. Zero presence. Looks like shit. Gone in 2 weeks. But for some reason, Jacob Fatu gets to stick around, right? Good for him, And when I say some reason, we all know the reason. Because he has to compete with people like Pretty Deadly and Pete Dunne and Carmelo Hayes, who are never going to make it. So that's my issue. My issue is this, extreme overratedness of Jacob Fatu. I know nobody's entertained by him because nobody gave a flying fuck when the last 9 Samoans did the same thing. What's the difference between Jacob Fatu and Rosie from Jamal and Rosie? Or Jamal, for that matter, who's Umaga. Nothing! They were 2 boring-ass Samoans who dressed in streetwear and then got nothing out of their careers. Until one of them was repackaged as Umaga and the other one was repackaged as Hurricane's sidekick. That's what's in the future for Jacob Fatu. A nice repackaging. This guy's not going to be this massive star that everyone thinks. People think he's going to be this WWE champion. That would be one of the most colossal errors of all time. I'm pretty sure I would rather have Cookie Rhodes and CM Punk as champions when compared to Jacob Fatu. I'd rather have Jay Uso be champion. At least he's over. You know what I'm saying? And with that being said, Cucks, this has been like a meso rant. Not a mini rant. Definitely not a mega rant on how Jacob Fatu is overrated and how I'm fucking tired of the fact that he gets pushed by the fans. I have no problem with him even being a mid-carder, right? That's perfectly fine. We need some mid-carders. He might be a solid one. Him and Obafemi can feud for the U.S. title for the next 10 years. They can feud until the cows come home, for all I care, right? But none of these guys deserve to be in the main event. You dig?